Hi guys, hope you're doing good, and today I'm going to do a response to Steve over at S&T Young, and I'm going to be talking about my top 10 new wave of American heavy metal bands. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Steve over at S&T Young did a really good video talking about his 10 favourite new wave of American heavy metal bands, and I thought it was a really awesome video, so much so that I decided to do a response and do my own. I absolutely love the new wave of American heavy metal, although I got into it pretty late on. I was in my last year of college, so that was 2017, 2018. That was when I first discovered it, and ever since I just really got into it during that time, and even still today I still love the well, it's not really a genre, but phase in metal music. Yeah, so for my list there will be a little bit of overlap with Steve's video, but there will be quite a few differences as well, and I will leave a link in the description so you can go and check out Steve's video. And yeah, before we get into it, I just want to say massive thanks for all the support. I know I haven't done any videos for a while, so yeah, I've got some really good ideas now, and I'm going to hope to get some really good videos out over the next couple of months. And yeah, I hope you go on to enjoy this video. Let's get into it. So before we get into my list, I just wanted to go over a brief outline of what the new wave of American heavy metal is and what it actually meant at the time of when it first came out and peaked. So it originated from the mid to late 90s and throughout the 2000s. The bands that came through back then are now really shining the torch for metal and like the future generations of metal music, and I think that's quite important. And also the time of when it came about, metal music was on a real low at the time. The boom of the 80s had really fallen away, and a lot of like grunge and other styles of music was dominating. But then when these bands started to come out, it really brought a good popular boom to metal music, made it popular again, and got kids at the time listening to metal, which in a way you have to give it great credit for that. And the genres associated with the new wave of American heavy metal include groove metal, nu metal, alternative metal, metalcore, melodic death metal, and deathcore. Now we're going to get into my top 10 list, and my list is going to be in a particular order, and of course they're all going to be my own opinion. And for this list I have not included this band, and that band is Pantera. And the reason why I've not chose this band, or not included this band, is because I associate them more being a proto new wave of American heavy metal band, if that makes any kind of sense. For me, this band paved the way for all the bands that I'll mention in this video, and without Pantera I don't think any of those bands would exist, and to be honest I don't think we'd have metal music the way we have it today without this band. To me, I think Pantera are a little bit like Black Sabbath for this kind of genre, especially with this album. When this album came out, they absolutely blew up and metal become massive again. But yeah, I would basically describe them as being like a Black Sabbath of new wave of American heavy metal, where some people might include them, and it's understandable, but I personally won't for my video. And also I just wanted to go through a couple of quick honourable mentions, bands that could make the list in the future but at this present time I just haven't listened to enough of. And those three bands are God Forbid, Carnifex, and Through the Eyes of the Dead. All great bands, but as I say, I just haven't listened to them enough for them to warrant being on this list, but they could easily get on the list in the future. Now, without any further messing about, let's get into the top 10. And at number 10, I have got Suicide Silence. And this band, to me, is one of the big bands for deathcore. I think at the time when they first started, deathcore was very in its early stages, and this band, especially with this album, made deathcore absolutely massive and sprouted a million deathcore bands that kind of sound a bit similar to them. What I like about the early Suicide Silence is that they really mixed that aggression from death metal with the attitude of like new metal-ish but punky kind of sound as well, with a little bit of like hardcore in there as well. That's what I really like about the early Suicide Silence. And then of course they absolutely went massive with this album, The Black Crown, which is not my favourite. I'd probably say the first two I like more than this. But still, this album cemented them for being a massive band for the new wave of American heavy metal. But then their original vocalist Mitch Lucker passed away, which meant they had to get a new vocalist, and they got Eddie Hermida, and they put out this album, which is another great album. And yeah, quite nicely, a little tribute there to Mitch Lucker. I didn't discover them, however, on this album, Become the Hunter, and I really enjoyed this album, and this really was the album that got me into the band. And yeah, I really like them. At number 9, I've got Avenged Sevenfold. And I first discovered Avenged Sevenfold in about 2019, 2020-ish. And I blind bought this album. And I was absolutely blown away by the guitar playing, the guitar solos especially. Wasn't too sold on the vocals, but there was enough there for me to like. And of course, Avenged Sevenfold with this album really blew up, and the subsequent album, which I believe is my favourite album by them, the self-titled, from 2008 or 2007. This album is damn near perfect. A couple of tracks here and there that are sort of alright, but yeah, this era of Avenged Sevenfold is probably the best. As I said, I love Sinister Gates' guitar playing. I think he's absolutely fantastic. One of the best guitarists of the 21st century. And yeah, M Shadow's vocals, to be honest, they're a bit hit and miss for me. Their whole discography to me is a bit hit and miss. But that album's fantastic, and also I wanted to show the stage as well, because this album is amazing. It mixes like progressive metal with like traditional metal. There's a bit of experimentation in there, but not as much as on their recent album, which is a bit too far for me. But this album is a gem that I don't think gets talked about enough. Great album, really cool band, even though they have gone down in my estimations recently. Number 8, I've got Machine Head. And again, Machine Head were one of the first new wave of American heavy metal bands that I listened to. The album was The Blackening, which is an absolutely awesome album. I remember me and my dad, we listened to that a lot, and then we pretty much got everything by them, or almost everything by them. The debut album, Burn My Eyes, is an awesome album. It's fantastic. Real groove metal sound. At the time, would have been very game changing at the time. And I still think this is a good album. It's not my favourite, I've got to be honest. I think my favourite probably is The Blackening. It's thrashy, it's groovy, it's heavy, it's got little bits of melodic side in there as well. I just think this album's perfect. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. I know Machine Head have had their little dips, you know, and to be honest, I'm not a massive fan of the band right now, but I can't fault these albums. I think this is an underrated one, Through the Ashes of Empires. This one came out after a couple of dud albums, really, when they went nu metal, but then they brought the groove metal back with this one, and then they went on a good streak with that, The Blackening, and this album as well, Unto the Locust. Gets a little overlooked as well because of the predecessor, but still, fantastic album, great band. And number 7, I've got As I Lay Dying, and I really like this band. The first thing I actually heard of them was this album, Shaped by Fire, which at the time was their comeback album after they'd been away for a few years due to timbalembesis. But yeah, there was something about this album that really hooked me and started to get me more into metalcore of the 2000s, really. And then I went back and I've got almost all their stuff now. Actually, I think I do have all their stuff now. This was one of their big breakthroughs back in the mid 2000s. Really good album. I really enjoy that one. But these next two for me are my favourites because they are just fantastic. That's An Ocean Between Us. This album has got some really cool artwork as well. And Powerless Rise. I think this is probably my favourite album by them. I don't know, there's just something about this album, it's just awesome from start to finish. Really heavy, thrashy in moments as well. Yeah, great vocals from timbalembesis on this as well. Yeah, great band. I'm not sure if they're going to be doing anything else because, like, since they put out Shaped by Fire, it's all kind of gone a bit downhill since then. But yeah, you can't deny this era of the band is just absolutely amazing and definitely worthy of being on my top 10. Number 6, I've got Slipknot, and yeah, another one the same as Machine Head, one of the very first new wave of American heavy metal bands that I discovered, and I was just instantly hooked. I just thought this band are just so weird and crazy. I'd never heard anything like it at the time. And the first album that I heard by them was this one, Volume 3. And yeah, to be honest, this is my favourite era of the band. This and also All Hope Is Gone. These two are my favourite 2 albums by Slipknot. I just think they're really cool. They're more guitar driven. You know, there's more guitar based stuff in it, more solos, and you know, Corey's vocals are a bit more diverse and varied. I just think it works really well. And obviously you've got the classic old school lineup there before things started to go a bit downhill, and you know, they changed members passed away, and the band now are not as good as they were, but you know, that era of the band is just fantastic. Might surprise a lot of people, but I'm not a massive fan of the debut. I'm just not into that kind of nu metal stuff that they did on that album, and it's a bit weird. But the second album, Iowa, I think is really good. Really love a lot of the songs off this album. Really heavy and aggressive. And yeah, I feel very lucky to have seen Slipknot I saw them in 2020 with Behemoth, and they were awesome. We Are Not Your Kind tour. So yeah, that's it. Slipknot at number 6. Into the top 5 now, and in 5th place I have got Shadows Fall. And I've just got to briefly say that this band I haven't listened to as much as all the other bands on this list, but because I loved this album so much, this is The War Within, they just had to make the list for me. And since I have listened to other albums, but I don't have that many albums by them, which is why I wasn't sure whether to put them in the list, but what I have heard, I've absolutely loved, and I would like to get more albums by them if I can. I know they're not easy to get, but this album and the one before it, whatever it's called, I'll have pictures of some of the albums that I've listened to that I've not got. But yeah, this one has got bits of melodic death metal in it, bits of thrash metal in it, bits of metalcore in it. It's just got bits of everything, and I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic, this album, which I got gifted by Simon at Pieface. And also I got this one as well, Fallout from the War, which is a compilation album of songs that didn't quite make albums up to this point. And this has got some great stuff on it as well. Of course, it's got the guitar player who is in Anthrax now, Jonathan D.I.E. And yeah, just a really awesome band. As I said, thrashy metalcore with some melodic death metal in there, awesome guitar solos, great vocals. A band, if I had listened to them more, they might even have gone further up on this list. I love them that much. So yeah, they could easily move up the list if needed, well, in the future. At number 4, I've got Mastodon. Now, Mastodon for me are a band that have been so consistent, even though they've changed their style so much. I've never known a band change their style so much, but also be really consistent and not make a bad album. It's a strange one, but I know with Mastodon, people either like the early stuff or the later stuff. I like both. I think they're both great. This is probably my favourite album, Leviathan. This is just an amazing album. Progressive, but heavy and aggressive as well. Yeah, just an awesome concept album about Moby Dick. Again, another massive band in the 2000s, and you could even say that they've gotten bigger since then as well. The follow-up, Blood Mountain, is another fantastic album. Really enjoy this one. And then they hit the stratosphere with Crack the Sky, and a lot of people, this is their favourite. It's not my favourite, but well, I did a Mastodon ranking not that long ago. I'll probably leave links or whatever for that if you want to check it out. Yeah, and then my favourite of their later stuff is this one, Emperor of Sand. This is just a really underrated album. I think it's fantastic. A good place to start with if you've never listened to the band. I think this is a good album to start with. And yeah, they're just a really, really awesome band that have not done anything bad, to be honest. And yeah, even though I discovered them pretty late, about 2021 I think, but they've really shot up this list because the more I've listened to them, the more I've loved them. Now into the top 3, and I mean, as much as I love them other bands, there was no way they were going to break into this top 3. And in 3rd place, I've got Lamb of God. And to me, Lamb of God are just another one of them bands that are just so consistent, and they just put out really solid albums. I just really like Lamb of God's style. Their riffing as well. I think their riffs are so underrated and really tricky and technical. And my favourite albums by them has probably got to be one of these two, Ash to the Wake or Sacrament. Both are fantastic and really, really awesome. This is probably their big boom as well. When they put these two albums out, they were absolutely massive, especially with Sacrament and the song Redneck. That's like one of their biggest songs. But yeah, Ash to the Wake is amazing. As the Palaces Burn, this is a bit of an earlier one. Still good, really raw and heavy. Good album. They've done some other good stuff in the 2010s, like Sturm and Drang and Resolution. I think are pretty good. But then they didn't do an album until the self-titled in 2020, which I thought was really good. And then 2 years later, they brought out this album, Omens, and I think this album is fantastic. This album is so good. This is like, it brings back that Ash to the Wake, Sacrament, just brutal heaviness, but obviously with a modern twist, modern production and everything. But yeah, I think this is their best album since Sacrament, and yeah, definitely worth a listen if you've not listened to that album. It's awesome. Number 2, I've got Killswitch Engage. And again, I think quite a lot of people that know me know that I absolutely love Killswitch Engage and bands that sound like Killswitch Engage. I haven't really got a preference on the vocalists, as I've had 2 in their time. I think Jesse is really good. I think Howard as well is absolutely fantastic. My favourite album, again, it has to be this one, Alive or Just Breathing, I think. I don't own the debut. The debu's also really good. I'll have to do a Killswitch Engage ranking at some point. But yeah, this album is awesome. And yeah, Jesse Leach, after this, he left the band because he had a lot of personal stuff going on. They got Howard Jones and made this absolute classic of the 2000s. Got to be one of the best metal albums of the 2000s. Yeah, just an amazing album. I love this one. And then they had more success with this album, As Daylight Dies. I don't think it's quite as good, but still pretty good, and of course very successful for the band. And then they did another album, and then Howard was out, and then they brought Jesse Leach back, and they come back with this album, which is an awesome album. I think this album's fantastic. Very underrated because, I guess because of the time it come out, but definitely a return to form and a really good album. And then the album that I first picked up by the band was their latest album, Atonement, that come out in 2019. We're due a new one. I hope they bring a new one out soon. Yeah, this album is just really, really cool. It's got some like old school thrashy stuff going on, some really heavy stuff. Very underrated album, I think. I think it's a really good album. And yeah, the one that really got me into the band at the time. So that's my number 2. And my number 1, I'm sure you already guessed, because I've already got the t-shirt on. It's Trivium, of course it is. I just absolutely love this band, which I'm sure everyone knows, and they probably already switched off because they're like, talking about that band again. But I cannot describe how much I love this band, and the fact that I'm going to go and see them next year is going to be awesome, and they're going to be playing this album live, which is going to be fantastic to see. This is really their breakthrough, metalcore style, very thrashy at times as well, very aggressive, very raw, just an awesome album, one of their best albums. And then they did The Crusade, which is basically like Metallica meets Iron Maiden meets modern heavy metal kind of thing going on with this album. I've done a video actually about this album if you want to watch it. I might leave another thing so you can watch it. Really great underrated album that. Yeah, very Metallica in the vocals. Then this is their magnum opus for me. Shogun, just stunning from start to finish. Unbelievable guitar playing. And that's something that I really like about this band, is that their technicality and guitar prowess is just top tier. You don't really get that with a lot of bands that come out around this time. I mean, the technical proficiency is there, but they don't usually show off as much as they could, you know. But with that album, they definitely did, but also wrote some really great songs. And then after that, they kind of had a couple of little dips in the road, a couple of lineup changes, but then they got back to their best with this album, which is almost like a modern day version of Shogun, to be honest, because it's got that progressiveness in there, technicality, thrashiness as well. Awesome album. And this was my favourite of the modern Trivium up until they put out this album in 2021. And this is just, again, it's similar kind of vein, but with a bit more modern sounding, thrashy at times, progressive at times. Awesome album. And hopefully Trivium will be doing another album soon, because this one was really awesome. And yeah, of course, Trivium is my number one. So this was my top 10 favourite new wave of American heavy metal bands. I'd love to know what you thought of any of these bands and what you think of new wave of American heavy metal in general. Would be awesome to see other response videos, although I know that might be difficult because a lot of people probably aren't really that bothered. If not, then in the comments, just comment what your favourite new wave of American heavy metal bands are, and it'd be really cool to see what people think. I just want to say another thanks to Steve for giving me the inspiration to make this video. Really appreciate that. And if you got this far, thanks ever so much for watching. Until the next time, keep it metal.